In this corner, we have the Phantom of Fur, the Dialysis of Paralysis, Spirit Flower Spider.
Actually, my name is Lala Barina.
And in the other corner, her opponent, the chicken that's still kicking, the pecker with no pecker. He puts the bay in flambe, Strange Bird.
Actually, my name is, you know what, close enough.
Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters
of all ages, today we're here to talk about and celebrate another fun Monster Hunter-centric event. Another tournament of champions, this time taking place in Taiwan. This tournament then was held at Taipei Game Show over the last couple of days, and along with some fun little extra goodies like a concept art showcase, some of it going by on screen here to show you some examples and such, but a lot of this stuff has already been seen in some capacity. There was a lot of armor set concept art, some Palico and monster concept arts, and a big star of it all was this big, massive panel banner with the Iceborne roster that looks just absolutely gorgeous, and I wish that I could have this as like an entire wall in my house that looked like it. Beyond this, they also talked about a couple of collaborations that simply don't exist in the West, so we don't get to hear about them too often, which is a great opportunity to mention them here. There was some mention of the Monster Hunter and Puma collaboration that was announced a little bit ago, and some Puma Monster Hunter jackets are actually one of the rewards for the championship itself. There is a collab with Fandora for some fun things like keychains, a severed arkveld tail plushie, which I think is hilarious if that actually is what it is. That's what it looks like to me. And then they even showed this big like potion blanket that looks pretty awesome too. They do also make mention of this collaboration that I had no idea about, a collab with a place called Sushiro, which as you might imagine is a sushi restaurant. And they have a full Monster Hunter event going on from January 16th to February 12th with a full Monster Hunter menu. And the big selling point is custom monster-based plates, with the examples being Chotacabra and Lala Barina that we only see the boxes for, but then Ray Dow and Arkveld plates that we actually get to see unboxed thanks to this person here, and these are super duper cool. I am incredibly jealous that we don't have access to these in the West. Beyond that, they had some fun extra bits during the event, like they held a quiz to try and identify monsters from a picture of their uncolored limbs, which is pretty neat too. But today I want to mostly focus on the tournament itself, the quests, the teams that made it to the finals, and what their strategies and gear choices were for accomplishing the best times, and for the team that eventually won it as well. And a fun note that this event was of course attended by Tsujimoto-san, the producer for Monster Hunter Wilds as a whole, as well as Takuda-san, the game director for Monster Hunter Wilds. Sadly, there was no translation to English available, so I can't tell you anything about what they actually said, but awesome to see such important figures fully invested in these types of events. First of them, we'll sort of blast through the qualifiers, as these weren't covered in great detail, but the quest, which you can still do in game for yourself right now, is to do a Lala Barina and then Yonkut together one at a time. As usual for these, it is an arena challenge quest, meaning preset conditions and equipment loadouts that you have to work around, and a super interesting part of that from my perspective is that the qualifier and final don't often have a huge amount of weapon overlap between them, so unless you get really lucky, you probably have to be quite good at least 2 different weapons in the game to succeed overall, and I really respect that. That said, for this first quest in the qualifier round, the options were full Hirabami armor with either switch axe or heavy bowgun, with the switch axe also being Hirabami switch axe, which is an ice element file weapon, and the heavy bowgun being ignition mode and wyvern heart focused with spread level 2 for when the gauge is inactive. Logically, Yonkut is super weak to ice element, so that would be a pretty good pairing for the switch axe, but Lala Barina is quite resistant, so if you were to bring the switch axe for the Yonkut, you'd think that you might want to be using heavy bowgun first for the Lala Barina, but in actuality, the fastest time team that was actually shown in the qualifier stream at least, which was the 5th place in qualifiers, as many of the actual finalists didn't have their qualifier hunt streamed because of the nature of this section. They can only show one hunt at a time, and a lot of them were happening at the same time, but this team had a player who actually used the switch axe on Lala Barina and was very effective, but then when the Yonkut showed up, he did the opposite of what my instincts were and instead swapped off of the ice element switch axe over to the heavy bowgun, and then they just bursted it down incredibly fast, which they did by using wyvern heart while he was flying in, which is the main reason why heavy bowgun is such a big deal here. And then during the paralysis from the bow player, they just bursted it down even more. They used exhaust ammo to regen ignition gauge as well as quickly as possible, but also getting a stun by shooting it at the head because exhaust ammo does have stun value. And during this stun window, they popped out another wyvern heart and just absolutely obliterated the monster from there, including using wyvern ammo to finish off their surprisingly long reign of burst damage. The second equipment set is full Lala Barina armor, which mostly just means lots of ranks of 4A, and the weapons for it are sword and shield or gunlance, with the sword and shield being a Lala Barina SNS for paralysis, and the gunlance being just straight up hope gunlance with normal shelling type. This one was used by the team that placed 7th in qualifiers, which is the only other team team that we actually got to see on the stream that made it to the top 8, ending in 7th place, just outside of the bracket for the actual finals. But they used the gunlance from this and did not swap weapons at any point, but the gunlance seemed to do quite well for Lollabarina, though their Yonka-Ku kill time was a little bit longer than the other team that we did just talk about. Except this equipment set does actually have a pitfall trap as well, which they did make use of too. Then the third set is full Yonka-Ku armor with 4 ranks of agitator and a bunch of stamina skills for either hammer or the bow as well. The hammer is the Yonka-Ku hammer, which is fire element, good for Lollabarina, except that hammer isn't the greatest at applying element damage without changing combos to ones that lose you way too much raw damage to be worth it, so that sadly didn't see much use. But then the bow is Conga Lala bow, which is a very solid bow in its own right. It also has paralysis and poison coating and blast coating, and then power coating is the main damage option. The only status coating that I saw actually used properly by these teams was the paralysis coatings, with one team using it to get 1 paralysis for each monster, but the more effective use seems to have just been only swapping to paralysis coating for Yonka-Ku while he is landing from flying when entering the arena, which was the group with heavy bowgun on the other player that just sort of smashed through him as he was entering in and fried that chicken like the colonel himself. Here are all the top teams from the qualifier around them, and to be clear, it's only the top 6 that actually get to compete for the grand reward. The 2 beyond that are listed as reserves in case a top team can't make it for one reason or another, but they still did extremely well, and all of the teams are worth celebrating too for that reason. It said for a little bit of fun, take this with a grain of salt because I'm just using Google Translate. I don't speak this language myself, but I want to be able to actually refer to the teams in a way that I can repeatedly say, so the team names seem to be Pursuit of High Attribute Unleashing Slash in first, and if I were to take a contextual guess, it should probably say Full Release Slash, so something like Pursuit of Full Release Slash. It is a reference to Switch Axe. Excise is a stylized version of the word excise, which is like a verb for a surgical removal or cut, like getting rid of a tumor with a scalpel. The third group translates to Look at My Steamroller, and I can't begin to guess what that is supposed to say, but I think that's a great name regardless, even if it is just this. Then we have Monster Hunter Forever, and this team, for those that aren't aware, is actually quite historied here, as they were the team that won the Monster Hunter World Championship version of this event back in 2018, and they also won the Iceborne expansion version of this championship back in 2020. So some pretty big expectations upon them. RD Song, which from further investigation seems to mean RD Mulberry, like the berry, but it's also a surname as well with the same meaning. The next one I think just did not translate well at all, but a different translation that I've seen is just backpacking workers, which maybe I'm misunderstanding, but it sounds like they're saying something along the lines of we're just regular guys type of deal, if that's the correct translation, and that would be the top 6 there. Next is Three Cats Chiao Fu meaning a woodcutter or woodsman like a lumberjack, so cat lumberjacks, and then Wilderness House, relatively simple with that one, sort of like wild is my home is my interpretation of that. Obviously I'm not trying to say these are perfect translations, but I need a way to refer to them in a way that I can say in English moving forward, so that's what I'm going to be going with. That said, let's get into the finals themselves. The challenge quest for the finals was a full-on gore magala, just a slight step up from the qualifier quest in pretty much every way except for number of monsters of course. The moveset is harder to avoid, and getting hit is one of the greatest losses of damage that you can have. That said, this time I will go through these sets without the in-quest context just so I can be a bit more analytical with the actual hunts themselves, as this is the full proper finals. For the equipment then, the first set is full Guardian Rathalos, which means 5 ranks of weakness exploit. They've got some foray in here from the charm, full maximum might, and they even put full antivirus in to help with frenzy if you get it too. But I'd argue one of the best parts of this setup is that it has full 4-set Rathalos bonus of Scorcher 2, which is quite potent after the most recent balance shift in Title Update 4, especially when used in an otherwise non-optimized setup like you would have in a challenge quest. The weapons are the Guardian Rathalos Switch Axe, which is a fire element file switch axe, and then also the Gravios Heavy Bowgun, which has effective wyvern harding but is modded to boost both element ammo and spread ammo. Element ammo you would have to hit the head with, so it's a very dangerous choice for a finals quest where you have one attempt to show off your skills. Second equipment set then is full butterfly armor of all things, so full constitution, full evade window, full coalescence for recovering from frenzy, full evade extender, just very comfort focused set on this one. The weapons are the Lollabarina dual blades, which are paralysis, which is quite decent, but crit status dual blades is a little bit awkward. The bow is Raidao bow, which isn't awful by any means, except that thunder is very middling on gore, like literally it is the 3rd most effective element, only being a 15 element hit zone on most of his body parts, and unlike the 2 more effective ones, it doesn't get stronger against his antenna when enraged, so my initial instinct before watching the runs was that this this set would likely not see too much use, as both the armor sets and the weapons just don't feel that strong for actual damage in comparison to the others. Though, I should mention, very important part of this between the paralysis on the dual blades, and then they also get a shock trap in the item set too, which will play an important role. Then we have the third set, which is full on Death Stench armor all the way down. They end up with full resentment, which pairs well with the Rocksteady mantle that they have. They have full ambush and some counter-strike as the main damage affecting skills too. And this one definitely has a lot of potential as a base, mostly because the shorter that your quest is, the more value you get from ambush, as it only lasts for 30 seconds after a sneak attack. So if you're going full speed run in the championship finals, it could easily push the boundary into being high value. Then resentment and counter-strike synergize with Rocksteady mantle as well. Not to mention that you also have greatsword as one of the weapon options for this one, which isn't going to be using the element part of it too effectively. Obviously it does have dragon, which is great, but greatsword isn't really the most element heavy weapon moveset to actually focus with, and the actual weapon skills for this are focus, full punishing draw, some crit element, and one rank of slugger, with the intention clearly being that they wanted you to do lots of draw attacks and play it basically as crit draw greatsword, but without the crit draw part of that. The other weapon is the Rompopolo charge blade, so poison and impact files. This one has a good bit of power just purely from being an impact file charge blade, and you can think of the poison as just being a sort of bonus for anyone who does choose to use this. That said, let's go through the finalist quests in order from slowest time to fastest, starting with the 6th place team. We have RD Song with a 2-minute 49-second finish. This team opted for double charge blade, both using the 3rd set, so a heavy amount of saw blading coming in here. They both guard point the initial roar to get power axe mode active and use their savage axe as their actual main damage source, charge up their shields, and then start absolutely blasting the monster. Early stun, and then just railing the head. They both start with their Rocksteady mantle on as well, which is a great synergy as the set itself, again, has resentment and counter-strike built in, so you can use that to get some red health, get hit, and then they hit the antenna flipping up 1 minute and 16 seconds into the quest, and just continue to focus the hell out of the head from that point forward. They did get hit a couple of times though, including a close call at around 2 minutes and 20 seconds, where they almost had a cart, but then they broke the enrage out for the free knockdown and ended him before he really got back up. In 5th place, the Backpack and Workers with a time of 2 minutes and 43 seconds. This team also went double charge blade, slight misplay at the start as only one player gets the sneak attack, and with this being the set that has ambush as a skill, that is a little bit of a big hit in this type of situation. They also only have one player get the power axe mode power up for the guard point on starting roar, so a little bit of a tough start for this team, but they got their stun nice and quick, and with a wound on the head in that moment, they recovered back into full savage axe spam quite quickly. But then disaster struck around 1 minute and 25 seconds into the hunt with a full cart going down, which is heartbreaking. They kept it going though, got back in there ultra quickly, and thankfully Charge Blade doesn't like reset buffs on death. They hit the antenna flip up at 148, but then some good flinches and some sharpness management to try and retain white sharpness, a knockdown from a head wound pop, a second stun directly into the enraged breaking antenna flinch for the free knockdown again, and they recovered enough to end 5th place despite some hardships along the way, and I love to see that kind of perseverance. In 4th place we had Look at My Steamroller with a 2 minute and 10-second finish, so a good jump up from the previous two teams, which were quite close to each other. It's worth noting that this team actually got a second attempt, which I am showing here. It's not exactly, I'm not sure why, as no one else did. Potentially some sort of like technical issues happened in their first run, so they got given a second chance, but it is worth noting that their first run was 2 minutes and 38 seconds, which still would have put them in 4th place just the same, but the actual time result they got in the end was much cleaner still. That said, this was the first team to change things up, and instead of double charge blade, they only had one charge blade player, and the other player used dual blades in the butterfly armor set, which did surprise me a bit on the surface at first until watching the run properly. Strong opening, double sneak attack, charge blade gets the guard point on roar to get power axe, ignores the enrage roar with a rocksteady, while dual blades perfect evades to activate demon boost mode. Then the classic if it ain't broke don't fix it strategy of whack gore magala very hard on the head. They get an early paralysis before even a stun, but slightly awkward position to capitalize for the charge blade user, and then they pick it back up pretty quickly with a solid stun timing as well. Wound on the head during the stun leads to loads of bonus damage. The moment the antenna flips up is around 1 minute and 25 seconds in. They stick down the shock trap and just bust them down here, literally part break before he can move again, but not quite enough to throw him out of this mode yet. Some really slick dodging, then they knock his feelers down around 2 minutes and finish him off before he can start properly moving again from the knockdown, nice and clean. A few seconds faster than that in 3rd place was Pursuit of Full Release Slash, the team that placed first in the qualifiers players with a time of 2 minutes and 3 seconds here. This team also opted for 1 player using charge blade, 1 player using dual blades, but instead of going for double sneak attack, they opened up with standard attacking. Charge blade gets power X mode from guard point on the initial roar, and they shock trap basically right at the start here, which I think would have made more sense if they had activated ambush on the charge blade. Dual blades perfect evades the enrage roar, charge blade guard points, and a stun directly into paralysis, which is lovely to see work out the timing without overlapping too badly. Then they actually have a mount happen here, and the only dangerous part of that is that the dual blades player could have caused a paralysis during the mount, but they don't, so everything's fine. And during the mount knockdown, they rail the feelers. They have some really slick dodging once he's standing up, some good guard pointing as well. They knock the feelers down just before 2 minutes, finishing the monster off before he stands up with a final time of 2 minutes and 3 seconds. Then a minuscule amount of time faster, literally less than 1 second quicker, was Team Xai's with a time of 2 minutes, 2 seconds, and 68 milliseconds. This team is again going for the charge blade and dual blades combo, double sneak attack opener nice and clean, demon boost from perfect evade on opening roar, but no guard point from the charge blade to activate power axe mode from that roar. It's not a big loss though, because he's still generating files and setting up. Successful guard point on the enrage roar activates power axe mode, and then they start to get in there proper with good damage. Gore flies into the air a little bit sometimes, but they manage to still hit the tail a good amount, which is still decent damage, and a paralysis as he lands back on the ground to recover that time back. Dual blades is doing the wound popping generally to use the fast slicer attack and get extra status buildup in, while charge blade tries to stand under the monster and hit the head from a generally safer position. Gore gets his feelers up at around 127, and a shock trap goes down immediately when this happens, which is generally the best strategy that I see, because this is the part where you really want to just rail into his head, get him out of this mode, get the knockdowns, get the damage in there. They get a good flinch right as the shock trap ends, a second flinch out of that, and then a stun for an insanely good chain of sort of a staggering directly into the feeler damage knockdown as well at 158, and they end less than a second faster than the previous team. Then we have our winners of the day, a team whose name I definitely can't mess up because it's in English, Monster Hunter Forever, who, as I mentioned earlier, won the World and Iceborne versions of the championship event, so they're essentially 3 in a row here, and they did this with an absolutely incredible performance of 1 minute, 44 seconds, and 54 milliseconds. So not only were they the fastest team, they were the only ones to break the 2-minute barrier, and they beat that barrier by a full 15 seconds and a little bit extra to spare too. So they absolutely smashed it. That said, this team actually did use 2 charge blades again. So it seems like the general curve of this is that 2 charge blades are the best ideal choice in a perfect run that has no problems. But having 1 player be dual blades makes for a lot more consistency with the paralysis and shock traps and such, but these 2 players had such a good run that their 2 charge blades overpowered that entirely. That said, we unfortunately only got to see this one from 40 seconds in because of a broadcast error, so we don't get to see a good portion of this hunt, but we cut in to see them just smashing into the monster, stuns and part breaks and pump an axe to the head. They actually get a flinch during the antenna flip up roar to cancel it, sharpen while it is happening, and then they get a mount with the head bonk on the pillar too for some extra damage. During the mount knockdown, they focus on the head, they get a stun to chain that knockdown further, then they get the antenna pop knockdown as he stands up super cleanly for an even further chain of knockdowns, then a couple more hits and he dies so quickly. An absolutely fantastic hunt, nearly flawless from the parts that we actually got to see at least. Very, very impressively done from Team Monster Hunter Forever. As for the actual rewards then, for anyone who's interested, all rewards will basically be doubled as each player on each team does get these prizes. All of the finalist teams, so all the top 6, get a special Wilds and Puma collaboration jacket, which is pretty cool and I'm immensely jealous. They also got a whole 50 servings of Ichiran ramen because why not, I guess. The 3rd place team received a Razer custom PS5 controller, 2nd place received a full-on gaming chair, and then the winners of the tournament, the championship, Monster Hunter Forever, received a very nice gaming monitor as well as the same golden arkveld head trophies that have been going around at these championships. Congratulations to the winners and all of the finalists, and big respect to anyone who went out and threw their hat in the ring here. I love how many of these events the Monster Hunter team have been running for Monster Hunter Wilds, and I hope that I can actually make it to one someday if the timing lines up, but it's great entertainment watching from home even, at least as someone who just adores the game and the franchise. I hope you've all enjoyed this sort of like recap and analysis of the Monster Hunter Wilds Taiwan Championship 2026 and the other stuff going on at this event too. Let me know your own thoughts on it all down in the comments below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.